Hi. So finally we've gone live. Are we live? Yeah. So finally, hi everyone. So finally we've gone live. It's long overdue. I've been meaning to do this for the longest time, but here we are. And really, we're doing this. This is the first episode of a series of episodes that we want to do. I am Dr. Shuba Dharmana. I'm a cosmetic dermatologist and the owner of Lejeune Group of Med Spas. And we have Dr. Shweta over here. She's a dermatologist, and she's a dermatologist at Lejeune Med Spa, Bangalore.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Shweta Sindhi. I hope you've had a great weekend, and thank you for logging on to our live video.
So today it's really about talking about the topics that, bother, concern all of us. And we chose to talk about something as simple as hand washing. Hand washing and the detergents and the chemicals that we come across on a day-to-day basis and how to deal with that. But if you have other topics that you want to hear about, then please do leave your comments about the topics that you'd like to hear about, and we will focus on those in the coming episodes. So, hand washing. What was the thing about a twinkle, twinkle, little star?
I had a trivia. Before we start, let's do some trivia. Just before that, let's just get some camera changes because this is our first live video, and so wonderful. So, I hope you can see us now.
Yeah,
right, better.
Yeah.
So the trivia which I wanted to share was when we were in medical school, we would learn how to wash our hands using the rhyme Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which was about 30 seconds, the perfect time to wash your hands and become free of germs. So that was something I wanted to share.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, hand washing is there for a reason. Hand washing is just a process of getting rid of the dirt, the grime, the debris, the oil, the sweat that we accumulate throughout the day. So it is important to wash your hands. And but then there are people that overdo it. They wash their hands very frequently. And what is too frequent? And right, so. Some people do it maybe twice in a day, 5 times a day, 8 times a day. Some people overdo it. They do it 20 times a day, 30. They get obsessed about it. It's one thing to wash your hands, but it's another thing to also get excessively obsessive about, frequently, hand washing.
So how much hand washing is too much? Like, how do we set what's normal and what's not?
That's a good question. So I think if you're constantly thinking about the hygiene aspect in your mind, and that consumes your mind all the time, you're talking about how you're going to wash your hands and whether you've washed your hands or not, and it's occupying most of your time. You have a set routine as to how you must wash your hands. Basically, you're consumed by these thoughts. Then I think you have a deeper issue, and then you will have to talk to your doctor about these things because you are then obsessing about it. There is something called obsessive compulsive disorder, and that's something that must be ruled out. Apart from that, you may not have such thoughts, but you still wash your hands very frequently because we're all taught from the longest time we've been taught you must be clean, you must wash your hands very frequently, wash your hands, you touch this, you touch that, you wash your hands. So is that right? And how often are we really supposed to wash our hands?
Right. While we talk about these things, I'd like to just add on that if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them at us. We'll be answering all your doubts about hand washing or anything else that you'd like to ask. I'm sorry, continue please.
So, when do we actually wash our hands? We should wash our hands definitely when we are coming in touch with some contaminants. So before and after eating food, after using a toilet and changing baby diapers, and we wash our hands when we are touching something, raw meat, livestock, animals, after touching animals or animal leashes or soiled products, then you would wash your hands, or touching a sick person, cleaning the wounds. After that, you should wash your hands. If you're coughing onto yourself or onto your hands or sneezing onto your hands, then you should wash yourself.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to just pitch in by saying that mobile phones and TV remotes are big harbors for germs. So please remember that that thing in your house which has the most number of germs could be your TV remote or your mobile phone, which you leave anywhere casually as you go. So remember to wash your hands intermittently when you handle such devices.
And so we were also talking about people that wash their hands excessively.
Right.
So your people that have dry skin, and they may have skin diseases such as irritant dermatitis, or just dermatitis problems, or rashes, or eczemas, or psoriasis, dry skin problems, and they should be careful about washing their hands too often. Too often, it strips down all the oils on our skin. It impairs the barrier that we have. Our skin is a natural barrier to infections and to other things. It acts as a barrier. So we are disrupting that entire system. When you take away the oils, then the skin is prone to dryness and cracks, and that actually encourages more microorganisms to get into your body. So that's you're just doing the opposite. You're allowing more of the infections to get into your body. So I would say just be aware of when you're washing your hands, and even if you do wash your hands, simple soap and water is more than enough to get rid of the germs. And immediately you must moisturize. If you've got a sensitive skin condition or a dry skin condition, you must moisturize. You must replace all those oils that you washed away.
And what about people who prefer using hand sanitizers? Those who don't have access to water, what do we suggest for them?
So I see a lot of people, and there's a big culture. There's a lot of people carrying hand sanitizers and all kinds of detergents and chemicals that they use. Whilst we say soap and water is the best way of getting rid of the germs on your hands. When you don't have access to that water, then of course sanitizers do come in handy. But there are different types of hand sanitizers. There are hand sanitizers that have alcohol in them, and there are hand sanitizers that have certain chemicals, like triclosan is one of the chemicals that is found in hand sanitizers and certain other detergent products. Anything that says antimicrobial or antibacterial will have this compound called triclosan, and that is a dangerous compound. Studies have shown that if triclosan is used, it can actually affect your endocrine, your hormones, your sex hormones, your thyroid, and there are a lot of other potential risks that can happen with using triclosan. Triclosan, when it comes in touch with water, with the chlorine in the water, it actually transforms into, chloroform. And we all know how dangerous chloroform is. And this, as it seeps into the water and into, the sewage systems, and it goes into the marine life, it disrupts the marine, the ecosystem. They have in fact found dolphins harboring triclosan in them, and that is how far it's traveling into the oceans. Triclosan does not get broken down by water treating agents, and it's just polluting our environment everywhere. Apart from that, they've also found that using triclosan in products does not really make such a huge difference to decreasing the bacterial count on our bodies. So it's not making that difference. So the only thing that really makes a difference is properly washing your hands with soap and water, letting that lather sit on your hands for about 20 seconds and then washing it.
Right. So hand washing has other hazards too. Just for some trivia, the first person to advocate some hand washing skills was Dr. Semmelweis, if I'm not wrong. And he wanted his junior doctors to practice the art of hand washing. Not only did the disease rates come down by 50%, everyone started getting less sick and they started attending college more often. But you would think that a person like this would get lauded for his genius. Instead, he was stripped of his medical license, he was humiliated, and he was thrown into an insane asylum. So see, that has talk about anticlimax.
Right. Yeah, and then you may have heard of something called the Hygiene Hypothesis, and I don't know how many of you have heard about this. So it basically says that a lot of the allergens and allergic disorders that we see now, like asthma and hay fever, eczema, these have doubled, tripled, increased 4 times more than they have in the past, and they attribute this to the hygiene hypothesis. This basically says that because of the frequent hand washing that we do, and we are just so careful about germs. We want a germ-free environment, and that's not so good because it is actually decreasing your immunity. It's not building your resistance, and that is called the hygiene hypothesis. And I see people everywhere, parents telling their children not to touch dogs, not to touch that. But that's, and how you're going to increase your immunity. They have found in one of the tests that it's not a test basically, but it's a known fact that children who grow up in a germ-free environment, who are asked to frequently wash their hands and who are given antibiotics every time there is an infection, these children are the ones that grow up to have a lot more decreased immunity and a lot more problems in the future, and they develop allergic disorders like asthma and hay fever are much more common in those children. Yeah, so and you had something interesting to say about the hygiene hypothesis.
This is something which is very interesting. So we know about the Berlin Wall, which was created to divide between East and West Germany. So what they did is, in 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down, they did a study and which showed that people in East Germany, it was very industrialized. Because there was so much smoke and pollution, their children had lesser history of all these allergic disorders. But the West Germany was technically more richer, or the people over there had cleaner homes. And so children over there had more allergic diseases. And 20 years later, when they did studies, they realized that people crossed over both sides, and now everyone had the same problems. Everyone had allergic diseases and eczema and hay fever, and so it shows a lot that your lifestyle has a lot to do with the diseases that come into your life. And this can be passed on to it has other factors as well, like genetic and your food and environment, but hygiene hypothesis is very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. We also wanted to talk about the sanitizers. So what kind of sanitizers do you then use? So where you don't have access to water and you need your sanitizers, then there are two types of sanitizers, as we all know, the ones with alcohol and the ones without alcohol, but they include chemicals like triclosan. You must avoid those chemicals because there's no need to use them on a daily basis. You should try and use, if you have to, you would use sanitizers with alcohol content in them. Most of the sanitizers that we see have 90% alcohol content in them. That's very drying to your skin. You can choose something that has 60% alcohol content, and that would be a good sanitizer to use. And when you're opening the doors in the toilet, the public toilets, you can use a tissue paper and hold the handles with the tissue paper. That's something that you can do. So that was about hand washing. But what about the other pollutants that we see on a daily basis?
Right.
There are skincare, your bottle of shampoo has as many chemicals, your bottle of face wash. So what do we have to live as well in a city, right? We have to live a civil life. So we try and avoid chemicals as much as possible, but really, what are the chemicals that one should be looking out for? One is the SLS. There's a lot of talk about SLS and SLS-free shampoos, SLS-free face washes. SLS is not such a big problem as such, but if you have sensitive skin, if you've got dry skin, if your skin is already cracking up, if you have got irritant dermatitis, you're prone to dermatitis, then you should avoid products which have SLS in them. So you have, nowadays the market is flooded with SLS-free face washes and shampoos, and that will, that's just, basically SLS is a surfactant, and it basically any product that has a lot of lather, and that is typically how we've been taught that we should cleanse. Yeah, we should like cleanse, and we should have lots of lather. That's not really necessary. That's really not necessary. You can have cleansing doesn't have to be as hard. It doesn't have to have a lot of lather and foam and chemicals. So SLS free is something that we can do, because SLS does decrease that again, that it impairs your skin barrier.
Right.
Especially when you have sensitive diseases like eczema and psoriasis and dry skin, then you should try and avoid that.
I think we have a question from Dilsha Shibu. She asks, is it safe to use sanitizers for kids?
This is another wonderful, we almost expected this question. Now for kids, a lot of the parents and doctors say sanitizers before you touch a baby. I understand why they say that, because babies do not have any immunity when they are born. It takes time for them to build up that immunity. It takes almost 1-2 years for them before they're vaccinated and have that kind of immunity. So I understand why they say that, but again, if you have to choose, as they have soil nappies, they have, other things, and you must, it makes sense to use a sanitizer. But again, choose a sanitizer which has alcohol, like 60% alcohol, rather than using something with a very high alcohol content or using something with triclosan.
Right. So we were talking about other things which we come in contact with. What about plastic, doctor? What about plastic is another thing which we handle on a daily basis?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a wonderful question. We all, how many of us are, guilty of buying that mineral water bottle wherever we go? We all buy it, and we all use, just check your fridge. I mean, we all keep those water bottles, plastic water bottles filled with water, and we keep them in the fridge. Is that safe? Absolutely not. A lot of this plastic contains PVCs and polycarbonates and phthalates, and these are all dangerous chemicals. They're not biodegradable. And they also release, if you leave a water bottle in the car in the hot sun, and then you go away and come back, in the hot sun, the plastic is melting and it's releasing a lot of toxins into your water. And that's the water that you're drinking. This is extremely hazardous to health. These phthalates and PVCs cause endocrine disorders, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, cancers, behavioral problems, and a lot of other things, memory problems. So we should